beta test in time of Campfire conversations today on Thursday, August 31st. Today I have two special guests and we're talking our first time about business in Northern BC. Gentlemen, introduce yourself.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Norm Adams. I live and work in the traditional territories of the Lake Tenay and Prince George. My company, Pivot Leader, works largely with small businesses. And a lot of the work that we do is largely around strategic planning, around HR and business development. And largely the work that we do is in Northern BC, although we do have work outside of British Columbia and outside of Canada. But really happy to be here today, Perry, and really happy to be with you, Maynard.
All right. Boy, that's a hard act to follow. Thanks, Perry, for the opportunity. So for this recording, I'm Maynard Angus. I'm with a company called Indigenous Canada Solutions, which formerly was Indigenous Corporate Solutions, and we made the switch and change because we saw the much larger need with regards to bringing the corporate and the Indigenous cultures together. So I'd like to say that I create a third space of engagement for both worlds and support the efforts of not only the Indigenous communities in its effort to get themselves into the business realm, but also to bring the corporate minds to understand the Indigenous cultures. And so there lies the challenge. But yeah.
And where are you located, Maynard, today?
I'm located on the Tsimshian traditional territories of the Tsimshian people.
Okay, perfect. And I'm Perry Cook, and I guess I'm something here. I'm one of the founders for Northern BC Business and BC Yukon Mining. And today I'm in the Coquitlam First Nations traditional territory down in the Lower Mainland. But I'm a Prince George, Northern BC guy. And I guess Norm, Maynard, and I have known each other for, oh God, I don't know how many years, gentlemen? 15 years? Oh. And
you're the longest relationship I've ever had. So I've known you for 26 years.
So we've known each other for years, and we've all in business and all looking at business of Northern BC and what needs to happen. So today we're talking about business relationships and the business work of how it operates in Northern BC. And we had some discussion before we started recording, but overall, it's one thing we have to remember, and especially in the north, let alone the.
Oh, you're cutting out, Perry.
Oh, okay. Where?
You're cutting in and out for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, your mic's cutting right out.
I don't know.
That always happens when you record.
No, someone just.
No. Oh,
wow.
There you go.
Sorry.
I'm gonna try this.
Are you using different microphones?
No, I'm using I have my one microphone on my laptop. Now I'm going to the big above me.
Yeah.
Is it better?
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds better.
Okay. Yeah, I'll use this thing from now on.
Yeah, I've got one of those. They're great.
Yeah. So we're in somebody else's territory always. And the overall concept is and we mentioned that the Northern BC has what, 300,000, 350,000 people, and we produce 65% of the provincial GDP of the province of British Columbia. And one thing that we look at this and understand is it's different up north. It's for people coming from Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, it's just a different world up north is the best, my perspective. You know, and both you gentlemen will know it's windshield time. You have lots of windshield time by driving. You know, you know where the Tim Hortons are, and you know where the weather changes are, and where you have to slow down in the winter time, where you can speed up, where you have to watch out for moose, bears, everything on the Highway 16. We use that example. So that's the basis of this. What do you guys feel about more business and business in general in the north?
Well, I think, you know, if you look at what sustains a community, it's usually traditionally, especially in northern British Columbia, it's the resources, right? If you look at coastal communities in the past, it's fishing, right? Essentially, it's what sustained a lot of communities. And you go inland and it's the forest sector. And now when you look at those two industries, you know, they're nothing like they used to be, especially the fishing industry. So you look at the communities that were sustained by that industry and it's no longer anything like it was. What happened to those communities? And then you look at the communities inland, you know, where there were pulp mills and not so much in the Prince George region, but more so out beyond Prince George that had sawmills and pulp mills and so forth. And what happened to those communities and or what is happening to those communities? So if you look at the transition that, you know, if you look at both those industries and how they were affected and impacted, you ask yourself, well, what happened? Like, why did things change? And a lot of it's got to do with global markets, right? Fishing, for example, right? You look at the export of the fish and, you know, rowan kelp and all those sea urchins and so forth that come out of the sea are going abroad. And when industries or when the economies change of even Japan, for example, look at some of the shellfish and some of the seafoods that were shipped to Japan. Then the new generation are not eating as much fish as they used to, and not eating as much rowan kelp as they used to, and so the value of that dropped, and so as a result, it had an impact on our community. And you look at the rest of the province around forestry, northern British Columbia, again, you know, not including the Prince George area, but for the most part, in comparison to the way things were, they're not the same. So where do we go from here? And I guess that's a question everybody needs to ask is what's next, right? What will the next 10 years look like? Because of course you've got port activities that are having a huge impact, and that kind of is supported Prince Rupert, fortunately and thankfully, that the port has diversified itself so that it now is no longer just, you know, two kind of terminal port, but now it's diversified in a way that it's now growing port, and it has been the fastest port in North America with regards to the containerization. So you look at that and you see what's next, and so you look at inland and so forth, and you look at again globally, you look at the need of metals and what could be used for. You got an economies of the world that are saying we want to go green. And so if you're going to go green, what do you need to go green, right? So you're looking at some of these metals that are required. And so as a result, you've got these huge mining projects that are happening in northern British Columbia, northwestern British Columbia, that will change, literally it'll make a change for a lot of these communities. So there's changes going on, like huge changes really from a global perspective that's impacting northern British Columbia. Now, that's kind of a 30,000 foot kind of view of really where things are and what things are going to happen. And so when you look at that and you say, okay, well, what kind of revenues are generated from a lot of those, well, from those economies? A lot. And where do the revenues go? Well, of course, Victoria gets revenues and they disperse it to the major centers. And what do we get back? Very little. And I think that's part of the conversation here.
We get bad roads.
Bad roads, yeah. I mean, I drive
bad roads.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as you go past Prince George, get outside of Prince George and you get to past Smithers, then it gets worse.
Oh, they're bad everywhere. You know. Norm, your perspective.
Well, I think Maynard, just to capitalize upon a couple of themes that Maynard mentioned there, and I think you're spot on. Um, that whole Highway 16 corridor from Prince George through to Prince Rupert, they've not only been one industry towns, they've been largely one employer towns, and I think for years we've seen that, but we didn't really acknowledge it, and we never really acknowledged it until sometime in the last 16 months with all the various rotating closures or rotating closures and then permanent closures that Campfire has announced over the last year. And it wasn't until Campfire started making those announcements that the various communities really started standing up and going, whoa, we have a problem here. And we now have various initiatives from the provincial government and the federal government to look at levels of entrepreneurship and manufacturing as options for those communities that have been hit the hardest. And we are kind of approaching this from a deficit model where we don't have that large family supporting income anymore, and we're trying to make that up and develop an entrepreneurship economy at the same time, it seems. And I don't like that um, that saying that says you're going to build the aircraft as you fly it, but I get the sense sometimes that that's what we're doing. And um, we are a region of natural resource extraction, and we've got a lot of big mining opportunities, we got a lot of big mining operations in Northwest BC, in North Central BC, in the traditional territories of Takla and Seke and Kwadacha. There's lots of exploration going on there, but and who knows where those are going to go? Are they going to turn into mines? And if so, it takes 17 to 20 years for that process to get to the point where they turn into a mine. And at the same time, we've got a green economy that's asking for more and more and more. So I think we've really got some decisions to make as back to government, I guess, is how are we going to manage all of that? Because there's a lot of pressures in the north of our province right now.
I got a question for both of you, and spoken as a recent northerner. In '92, I moved north, and I came from Alberta. And when I came from northern Alberta, I found the heavy unionization of, and the historical unionization of the pulp mills, sawmills, and the fisheries, and especially the canneries, right, Maynard? Have we made the change from the union job now to entrepreneurial? Is that is it a hard thing to take?
I know for Prince Rupert, and more so in Prince Rupert, only because of the nature of kind of where we're situated geographically, is that you've had a strong, for like ever since I was really little, you had a strong hold from the unions, the pulp mill, the sawmill, and the fish plants, right? All union driven kind of companies and industries. So no one would ever, especially it was so strong that the business community downtown would not speak against any unions because they knew better. And so has things changed for Prince Rupert? Slightly, not much. Still a strong union. You still got the remnants of, they're all in their 60s and 70s, and now their kids are coming in. And yeah, you look at the teachers, for example, you look at the city workers, you look at the dock workers, and I don't know what the percentage would be, but I'm going to kind of roughly guess here that probably 75 to 80% of the people in this town belong to the union, because just in the port industry itself, it's got at least just a dock workers. They got 1,500 people. That's just the dock workers. That doesn't include the truck drivers, the crane operators. It doesn't include all those industries that service the ports. So yeah, so for Prince Rupert, the unions is still a strong, has a stronghold with the companies they deal with, because if you look at the ILWU, the dock workers, they just got this agreement that was like $57 an hour. You don't even need a high school certificate to be working at that down there. You just need to know who has an application they can give to, and that's it. Some guys have grade 10 and they're making $56-60 an hour. That doesn't, you don't include, like, if you started to say, well, these guys are only working in the afternoons, well, then they're up to $60 an hour. So union's pretty strong still in this area. Terrace not so much so, because Terrace is more of a retail kind of community and for the greater part, but Prince Rupert is pretty still strong.
Maynard, where is the role? What's the role of Kitimat now? I mean, to my understanding was that Terrace was basically the hub of commerce between the three communities, and of course, Prince Rupert has taken off with the port, and that's really driven the fortunes of Prince Rupert. What is the relationship, say, between the three communities now, between Terrace, Rupert, and Kitimat?
Well, I think right now the relationship is essentially, there's a kind of, the business community is those that are contractors in Prince Rupert have gone to Kitimat. Politically, they always come together and say, okay, we need to speak with one voice. You get the mayors together and they'll talk about the needs of the region. One example being that's happening right now is we need a detox center, just as an example, right? The economy's gone boom, and what comes of that? Well, a lot of drugs and things like that. So the communities are speaking with one voice. So they're trying to, and they recognize, I think more so now, when you've got this, this boom in Kitimat, and then all of a sudden you got this continuous growth, and will continue to grow in Prince Rupert around port activities. And then Terrace is benefiting from the region, where they're benefiting from those from the mines, the ports, Prince Rupert, Kitimat, in some cases Smithers. So Terrace has become that hub. I think there's now a recognition that we need to work together, because in the past it really was, Terrace against Rupert, and nobody wanted to share anything. Terrace got all the provincial offices, and they moved them from Prince Rupert to Terrace. Well, that was left a sour taste in the Rupert businesses and so forth, and Terrace really advocated, because they had, if it was a Liberal government, well, Terrace had a Liberal MLA and we had an NDP, and we started to lose out because of that. And so, yeah, that's what's happened. It's slowly change. I see a slow change.
Oh, good.
Now, I guess we'll focus on the Northwest. Who has the power?
Northwest in regards to economics, or what?
Yeah, no, not so much but who is it? Is it driven by the Simpsons? Is it driven by the Toltens? Is it driven by the Heisler?
Yeah, I always go back to who's influencing who, right? I mean, you've got these major companies, and you've got the Rio Tintos of the world, and Ascot. I'm working with Ascot Resources, for example. They're quite large. They're looking at opening up another mine, and then you got Seabridge, and you got these companies that are quite large, and then of course you've got the port terminals and the operators. I would say that, yeah, I would say you're right with Perry with regards to kind of the First Nations, and part of it really is, a lot of it's got to do is they've now really asserted themselves in the sense of saying, you know what, we're gonna take a look at the Delgamuukw decision, and what did that do? We're going to look at the Calder decision, and we're going to look at some of these court cases, Supreme Court case rulings that have really put First Nations in a position where they are saying, you know what, consultation and accommodation, and what does that mean, and what does that look like? And now you've got the Truth and Reconciliation and 34 calls to action, and you've got the provincial government now is just kind of, in a sense, recognizing UNDRIP and now DRIPA. They've got an act there, and so you take all that, kind of those documents, and along with the Royal Proclamation, you're going to say, yeah, we got to do something. Our first step really is to have a relationship or some kind of engagement with these communities, because if you don't, right, you know, the old saying in the business, the old saying in the lending industry is your first loss is your best loss, right? So you spend the money ahead of time, it might cost you a few $1,000s, but if you don't, it'll cost you a few $1 million at the end in court.
That makes sense. And even though you go beyond Delgamuukw and the Calder decision, that even the Blueberry and the Chilcotin has really ramped things up for not even, it hasn't even gone to the Supreme Court. They just left it go at the federal court or the BC Court of Appeal. Like, yeah, we're not going to fight this because we're going to lose. Mm-hmm. Governments and industry say that. So it's now become, I guess, partnerships, you know. And I look at an example was there's a exploration company up in the Northwest, up in the Golden Triangle, and I don't know if I should mention them, but they've been highlighted. Norm, should I mention them?
No.
Yeah, okay. There's a couple of them, and they've not had meaningful consultation or agreements with a couple of exploration companies, and so they're done. Those companies are done. And then the worst thing is those companies have tried to go to the media to say, hey, we're not getting a fair deal from these guys, and they're like, yeah, that's not the right thing to do. Right? And a couple of the companies, we knew this 4 or 5 years ago. We heard rumblings, right? But now it's front. So in this area, it's partnerships, and it's meaningful partnerships. Now it's spreading everywhere, right? And it's going further than they could imagine. And most of the area, except for your territory, Maynard, or in your traditional area, the Nisga'a, nobody has treaties, right? In this part of the world of northern British Columbia. You get treaties up in the Peace Country, but in this area of the Highway 16 corridor, there's only one treaty, and that's the Nisga'a Treaty, right? And so things are different, but it's still the same concept as what type of partnerships can you have, and what should you do, and what, like we talked about earlier, it's beneficial partnerships. It's not just the token ones. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, beneficial partnerships, but it's also, there seems to be this attitude, and this attitude, I would say, was very much a board office, like in the front office attitude of the two mining companies, the exploration companies you referred to, is that you know, you're working with working for an Indigenous partnership. It's not like going to McDonald's. It's not a single transaction. You're developing relationships with people, right? You know, like if I can digress, my best example of this, we were recently working with a client who commented that it takes so long to create an Indigenous partnership. And my argument was, you guys have a great relationship with Campfire. And they said, yes. And they said, how many years did it take for you to get that great relationship with Campfire? And they all looked at each other, and they looked over at the company principal, who said, oh, well, we started this 20 years ago. And I said, so you have no trouble having a relationship with Campfire, which is a company that's cutting down the trees, but you don't see the benefits of investing some time in the nation on which the trees are growing. And well, 3 people looked down, and one person kind of looked through the back of my head and didn't really think too much of how I framed that. But it's true, and if we start approaching things with a little less transactions in mind, we might be able to move things forward a little bit.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think one of the big picture, one of the missing points that I think that most companies, and I again, I totally understand, I totally get it, is that the the way in which business is conducted is transactional, right? So like you say, you go to McDonald's, you buy something, there you go, here's your transaction. You got your product or you got what you wanted. They've got the funds that they're there to sell. We, in a sense, of doing business with the First Nations is not like that, because you're not doing business with a person. You're doing business with a community. And yes, you're talking to one person, but he's there to represent the community. And that is always in the minds of every First Nation person when they're talking to you. And that's why sometimes for some businesses, they don't get it. They don't understand. They're frustrated, because I talked to Johnny, and Johnny said, you know what, I'd like to talk to you, but we need to go meet with the chief and council, right? And so they go meet with chief and council, and they just wanted the transaction. Why do I have to talk to the chief and council? The chief and council represents the community. The community is, like the chief and council is a trustee for the community. So that kind of, you look at that picture and you talk about, how do we do business? It's changing when you talk about the landholders or the traditional kind of territories. It is the community. That's why for some it's so challenging, is because they're looking at the individual as opposed to the community. So.
And it goes back even further, and you want to go further, because dealing with the elders, dealing with the community, you want to have a deal with the community. Are you going out there for a fish fry? Are you going out there for a powwow? Are you helping the children with school, providing, are you not just throwing money? Are you being actively involved? They want to see who you are. And from my experiences, if you do a good job in that community, you're friends for life, right? You want to know who they are. And my experience is many times you first 4 or 5 visits, you're talking about how family is, and how the weather is, and how mushroom picking is, and how the fish are, and all that stuff. You maybe 5 minutes of business, they want to know who you are and how you are. It's a relationship that's personal that leads to business, not business that leads to personal. Right? And it's time. It takes time. I remember, 6 months ago, I had a company get a hold of me saying, yeah, they want to have a relationship with the First Nations. They need something in the next 2 months.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm serious. And I laughed. I says, well, I can't help you. We'll pay you good money. It's just not going to happen. Said, well, how long do you think it would take for us to get a relationship with them? It says, 2 years. Really? I said, yeah, because they don't know who you are. They know who I am, but they don't know who I'm coming on behalf. They know me as a person. They don't know me working for you. And I don't know you guys. Right? And so there's that whole trust and relationship of having that concept. Right? And so many times, I remember I was working for a company before, and they wanted to get a First Nations relationship somewhere up north. And their all feeling was, okay, we'll just charter a plane, we'll go up there and land there. It was like, okay, are you bringing blankets? They didn't get it. They did not, and nor will they ever get it. Right? And it's just, you have to be part of the community, right? And that's the whole concept. No. So, so can it go forward? Can people go forward and deal with this?
So what are you thinking? What are you asking?
If someone's watching this, besides my mother, this podcast, and they have questions, where do they go next? What's the advice you'd give to someone?
Well, I think, in my mind, it would be, kind of what Maynard's first question to you was when we first when we first got on the call, like what's the company's why? What if you're doing business in Northern BC, what is your plan? Why do you want to do business in Northern BC to begin with? Because unless you have, like, what is your legitimate business in Northern BC? You know, because it should be part of your overall strategy as a company, not just an afterthought.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is that those, and I'm talking about companies that are large, like some of these mining companies in Rio Tinto, for example, and Pacific Northern Gas, companies that are kind of servicing the region, or that are maybe national or global in perspective. In the area where we come from, when you look at these, especially with these shipping lines, for example, and some of these terminal operators like Dubai ports, for some they are at that point, but for others they're not. They don't realize it, and that is when you are doing business in British Columbia, and as we know, the kind of the landscape of the economics or how you do business changing. And it's changing because of the pressures that were put on by the political players in Ottawa or in British Columbia, for this matter, on around developing policies around how people do business in British Columbia with the First Nations. And so, some of these requests for proposals that go out, they require that your proposal kind of include your Indigenous relations strategy. And if you don't have a strategy, then sorry, you just can't complete this RFP. So that really has it's a barrier for some of these companies that say we don't want to engage with them. This is my company. I don't feel we need to do that. But from that level, we're starting to see those policy changes. And I think that's really where the First Nations are starting, is at the top, and saying, look, you know what, we can't monitor these companies that are going in and getting these contracts and going in and saying they're going to engage with us. They need to have a strategy on what that's going to look like and keep them accountable. And so that's essentially really kind of where I see things moving, that it forces the hand. People don't change unless you feel the pain. If you're playing with matches and you never ever burnt yourself, you'll play with matches until the hell burns over. But if you play with matches and you burn yourself and you go, oh my gosh, that hurt, I think I'm going to stop doing that. And you look at the business community, if you're the president and CEO of a company, if it's going to have an impact, the way you do business is having an impact in your back pocket, you're going to go, what do I need to do to fill my back pocket back up again? Do I need to change policy to accommodate, and do we need to develop a strategy, right? Do I need to call Maynard and say, hey, help? And that's when I get the phone call, is I'm in trouble, can you help me? But I don't get a phone call until that happens.
Do you get a phone call when it's too late?
Most times I do. The 11th hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I need something in the next 2 months.
That's right. And I've turned a couple of companies down that could have been lucrative. I've actually said, sorry, I can't work with you. You want to do this just to tick the box and try to speed things up? I can tell you right now it's not going to happen. But secondly, I know that your intent really is not to work with the people, with the communities, and I get it. But at the same time, you know what, your intentions are, your values and how you want to do business. Yes, I'm in business. You would think that a consultant would jump at that, but my values are, I would say, are strong in a sense of I want to make sure that the people are getting their share. Going back to, like, is there an equality of how things are done? I don't know how to put it into words, but I would say that, it's a parity, I guess, is going back to that word. So, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything. You got to stand for something.
Right.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to stop recording, so thank you very much.
There you go.